Look, I want you to just take a second and think about the absolute smartest decision you made this year.
Oh, that's a tough one to start with.
Right. But seriously, think about it. Maybe you bought a particular stock right before it skyrocketed. Or maybe you accepted a new job offer that just, it turned out to be perfect.
Or maybe you moved to a new city and everything just clicked into place.
Exactly. You look back at that choice and you think to yourself, man, I am a genius. Like, I looked at the data, I analyzed the market, I weighed my options, and I completely nailed it.
We all love that feeling.
Oh, absolutely. But what if I told you that your decision wasn't actually smart at all? What if you just got incredibly, unbelievably lucky?
Uh-oh. Here comes the reality check.
Yeah, and what if the exact same logical process you used for that quote-unquote brilliant decision is going to completely ruin your life next week?
It is a terrifying thought, isn't it? I mean, we all walk around believing we're the rational captains of our own ships.
Right.
We truly believe we steer our lives using pure logic. But the truth is, the water we are navigating is full of invisible currents, and, well, our steering wheel has a massive delay built into it.
So what's actually happening in our heads? Because, look, we have all been there. You make a big decision like investing your hard-earned money into a friend's new business project.
Oh, the classic friend startup trap.
Right. You sit down, you think about it for weeks, you look at their financial projections, and you make a choice. You think you're making a perfectly rational, bulletproof decision.
Yeah.
Fast forward 6 months later, the business is completely tanking, your money is gone, and you look back and realize the warning signs were literally everywhere. The decision was a complete disaster.
Yeah, hindsight is brutal.
It really is. Does that make sense? You ask yourself, why did I do that? I thought I was being so smart. Like, why do we constantly, predictably trip over our own choices?
It's a really fascinating question. And honestly, the answer is actually quite liberating once you understand it.
Liberating? How so?
Well, the very first thing you have to understand, and this is absolutely crucial if you want to stop beating yourself up, is that your brain is not broken.
It sure feels broken sometimes.
I know. But you are not inherently stupid or bad at making decisions. The reality is that your brain is simply operating on ancient software.
Ancient software? Like, what do you mean?
If you trace human evolution back, our brains developed in a vastly, wildly different environment than the one we live in today.
You mean like back in the hunter-gatherer days?
Exactly. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans lived in small tribes in dangerous, resource-scarce environments.
Right, running from predators and stuff.
Yeah. What kept you alive in a dangerous jungle? It was making split-second decisions based on shadows. It was fiercely following the crowd so you weren't left behind to be eaten.
Wow, okay.
And it was always assuming the absolute worst-case scenario. That software is basically hard-coded into your DNA.
So we're basically walking around with caveman brains.
Pretty much. Today, we're walking around a highly complex, data-driven, modern society using a brain that was designed to run away from wild animals.
That makes so much sense. We are using jungle survival tactics in a corporate office.
Precisely.
We're trying to read a complicated spreadsheet with a brain that is actively looking for a tiger in the bushes.
That's a great way to put it. What kept us alive in the jungle is the exact same thing that ruins our investment portfolios, our careers, and our relationships today.
And that is exactly our mission for today's deep dive. We are going to entirely focus on mapping out these hidden glitches, these systematic hardwired errors in our brains.
And we aren't just talking about occasional random mistakes where you just, had a bad day.
Right, not just oopsies. We are talking about the routine, predictable, almost mathematical traps we fall into every single day of our lives.
And we're going to shine a massive spotlight on these invisible traps. Because the beauty of human psychology is that once you can clearly see the trap,
once you know it's there.
Exactly. Once you understand the mechanical gears behind it, you are significantly less likely to step in it.
Okay, let's jump right into the first one because this one kind of blows my mind. It's about how we look at success.
Ah, yes. The success illusion.
Yeah. We all want to be successful. We want to be rich, happy, healthy. So naturally, the most logical thing to do is look at successful people, study what they did, and just copy them.
It seems logical, right?
Totally logical.
Yeah.
But you're saying this is actually the very first and maybe the most dangerous glitch in our thinking.
It is a massive glitch.
Right.
Looking at successful people to learn how to be successful is a trap called survivorship bias.
Survivorship bias.
Okay, because we only ever see the people who survive the process, we get a highly distorted, incredibly warped view of what it actually takes to win.
And I guess we misjudge the actual odds of winning, too.
Exactly. We completely ignore the odds.
Let me tell you a little story to see if I have this right. Let's say there's a guy sitting on his couch, just scrolling through his phone. Every day, he sees famous rock musicians.
Okay, classic scenario.
He sees them on magazine covers. He watches their massive stadium concerts on social media. He hears their songs in the gym, in the grocery store, just everywhere.
Right, they're highly visible.
Exactly. He sees this constant flood of rock stars, and his brain thinks, wow, there are so many of them. The chances of making it big in music must be pretty high.
They did it, why can't I?
Exactly. So he gets super motivated, drains his savings, buys an expensive guitar, quits his day job, and starts a band. But what actually happens to this guy?
Well, sadly, what happens is that the probability of him making it big is just a microscopic fraction above zero.
Ouch.
Like tens of thousands of others, he will almost certainly end up in the invisible graveyard of failed musicians.
The invisible graveyard. I like that phrase.
And that word invisible is the absolute key to understanding survivorship bias. You see, the burial ground of failures houses thousands of times more musicians than the big stadium stage does.
Right.
But no journalist, no documentary filmmaker is interested in the failures.
Yeah. I mean, nobody wants to read a magazine article about a guy who practiced guitar for 10 years and then went bankrupt and had to move back into his parents' basement.
Precisely. It's depressing. And it doesn't sell magazines. The media doesn't write articles about the thousands of bands that never got a record deal.
Or the authors who never found a publisher.
Exactly. This makes the cemetery completely invisible to outsiders. Because triumph is made so much more visible than failure, you systematically, mathematically overestimate your chances of succeeding.
So it's basically a grand illusion.
A total illusion. Behind every popular author you see in a bookstore, there are 100 other writers whose books will never sell.
Wow.
And behind them are another 100 who haven't even found publishers. And behind them are another 100 whose unfinished manuscripts are just gathering dust in a drawer.
But we only ever hear of the successful ones? So our brain just assumes the failures don't exist. We see this everywhere, right?
Everywhere. With photographers, athletes, actors, entrepreneurs.
We think, if they can do it, the path is proven. Let's apply this to a real-life problem, something a lot of listeners might actually face. Investing in a friend's startup business.
Oh, this is where it gets really dangerous.
A friend comes to you with a slick pitch deck, and you think, wow, this could be the next massive tech giant. Because we constantly hear the stories of these huge multi-billion-dollar tech companies starting in a garage.
Right, the classic two guys in a garage myth.
Yeah, two guys in a garage eating instant noodles, and 10 years later, they are billionaires. But we completely ignore the reality.
And the reality is the thousands upon thousands of companies that started in a garage, ate the exact same noodles, worked just as hard, and went totally bankrupt in the first 3 years.
We just don't see the bankruptcies.
We don't. And what's crazy is that even the most sophisticated financial markets do this.
Really? How so?
Well, if you look at major stock market indexes, like the ones reported on the Evening News, they are entirely made up of out-and-out survivors.
Oh, wait, because the bad companies drop out.
Exactly. The failed, bankrupt, and stagnant businesses do not stay in those major indexes. They are removed.
I never thought about that.
So when you look at the historical performance of the index, you are looking at a highly curated list of winners.
Which makes the stock market look much safer and more profitable than it actually is for the average individual company.
Precisely. Survivorship bias is like looking at the world through a funhouse mirror. It completely distorts the probability of success.
Man, it really does.
And it becomes especially dangerous when you try to extract quote-unquote success factors from winning companies.
Oh, like reading business books.
Yes. You might read a best-selling business book that studies 10 highly successful companies. And the book concludes that all these successful companies share a specific trait, like, say, a decentralized management style.
So you think, aha, decentralized management is the secret to making billions.
Right. But if you were to visit the invisible graveyard of failed companies, which the author of the book definitely didn't do, you would find that hundreds of bankrupt companies had the exact same decentralized management style.
Wow. So the trait you thought caused the success was actually present in the failures too. That completely invalidates the advice.
Exactly.
Okay, wait. Let me stop you there and push back on this a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
Because this sounds almost too cynical. Like, shouldn't we look at the winners to learn what works? I mean, surely hard work and practice means something, right?
Of course they do. But
like, if someone is an Olympic champion swimmer, shouldn't I look at how many hours they swim and how they train so I can get a body like theirs? Are you saying their training doesn't matter?
No, I'm not saying training doesn't matter at all. But your example brings us to another major, deeply ingrained glitch in the human brain. It addresses your question perfectly.
Okay, what is it?
Looking at winners to find the cause of their success creates a very specific illusion. We constantly confuse the selection factor with the result.
The selection factor.
Yes. But let's take your swimmer example. It is a classic one.
Right. Professional swimmers have these incredible, perfect, streamlined bodies. Broad shoulders, long torsos, long arms.
Exactly. And most people assume that swimming for 8 hours a day gives you that body.
Yeah, that's what I always thought.
But professional swimmers do not have perfect, streamlined bodies simply because they train extensively. Rather, they are good swimmers because they naturally have that specific physical build.
Wait, really?
Yes. How their bodies are designed genetically is a factor for selection, not the result of their activities.
That is hard to believe. So swimming didn't give them the body. The body allowed them to become champion swimmers in the first place.
Precisely. This is known as the swimmer's body illusion. We confuse what makes someone eligible for a role with the actual outcome of doing that role.
Wow.
The brain naturally assumes that the activity causes the trait, when in reality, the trait is what caused them to choose the activity.
This completely flips how I look at everything. Let me see if I can apply this. What about advertising?
Advertising is built on this illusion.
Like you flip through a magazine and you see an advertisement for a luxury cosmetics brand featuring a stunningly beautiful model. The implicit message is, buy this expensive face cream and you will look beautiful like her.
But the face cream didn't make her beautiful.
Right.
She was born with a specific culturally desired bone structure and symmetry, and only for that reason was she selected for the cosmetics advertising.
Beauty is the selection factor, not the result of the product.
Exactly. If the cream actually worked that well, they could use anyone in the ad, but they don't. They select someone who already has the desired trait.
That is mind-blowing, and it makes me think about a massive stress point for families. Education.
Oh, elite universities, yes.
Right. Famous, highly ranked universities. Parents will literally spend their whole lives and hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to get their kids into these elite schools. They hire tutors, they move to specific neighborhoods. Why? Because they think the school will make their students brilliant and successful.
It is the exact same illusion playing out on a grand scale. Does that elite university actually make students significantly smarter?
I'm guessing you're going to say no?
Well, not necessarily. Or do they simply have such an incredibly rigorous, hyper-competitive selection process that they only recruit the absolute smartest, most driven, and wealthiest students in the first place?
So the university is just taking credit for students who are already going to be successful anyway.
Often, yes.
Yeah.
Research shows that the income gap between graduates of top-tier elite schools and graduates of average state-level schools often stems from a multitude of inherent reasons.
Like what?
Things like the student's internal drive, their natural intelligence, their pre-existing family connections, their socioeconomic background, things that have absolutely nothing to do with the actual classes they took or the professors they listened to.
So the university is a selection filter, not a magic factory that produces genius.
Yes.
So if we synthesize this for the listener, the big takeaway here is that we have to stop taking advice from naturally successful, naturally talented, or naturally happy people, because they're giving us advice based on an illusion.
Absolutely. Think about it in terms of happiness.
Okay.
When naturally upbeat, perpetually happy people write self-help books telling you to just smile more or see the glass as half full, they are completely blind to their own genetic or circumstantial luck.
Because they're just wired that way.
Right. Extensive psychological studies show that a person's baseline level of cheerfulness is largely a hardwired personality trait that remains relatively constant throughout their life.
So trying to just be happier doesn't work.
Trying to force yourself to be fundamentally happier just by following the simplistic advice of a naturally happy person is often as futile as trying to make yourself taller by listening to a basketball player.
That's a great analogy.
They don't realize they were born with a head start. They think their attitude is the result of their actions, but their attitude was actually the selection factor that made those actions easy for them.
All right, putting that aside for a moment, if we can't trust what we see about success, and if our brains are so easily fooled by these illusions, why do we keep believing in them?
It's a good question.
Why does our brain desperately want to believe that the swimming makes the body or the university makes the genius? Why are we so desperate for a rule?
Because our brains are absolutely fundamentally terrified of randomness.
Randomness.
Yes. The idea that life is just a series of chaotic, random events is deeply unsettling to the human psyche. The human brain is, at its core, a relentless pattern-seeking machine.
Oh, because of evolution again.
Exactly. Evolutionarily, finding patterns is what kept us alive.
Right, like if you were walking through the jungle and you hear a rustle in the bushes.
Yes. If you could recognize the pattern that rustling leaves plus a specific smell meant a predator was hiding, you survived. You ran away.
And the people who couldn't recognize patterns got eaten.
Simple as that. So we evolved to be incredibly good at spotting connections. The glitch, however, is that our modern brains are so eager, so desperate for patterns, that if they do not find one in the data, they will simply invent one out of thin air.
Listen to this. It's like seeing a face in a burnt piece of toast.
Exactly.
Or when you were lying on the grass as a kid looking up at the sky and you clearly see the shape of a dog or a castle in the clouds. I do this all the time, but it's just water vapor.
Yes, that phenomenon is called the clustering illusion. The brain takes diffuse, completely random signals and forces them into a familiar, recognizable pattern.
Like those weird news stories you see.
Right. You might see a local news story about someone finding a potato chip that looks like a famous historical figure, and people will literally flock to see it and pay money for it.
It's just a potato chip.
Or, on a larger scale, a space probe takes a picture of a rocky hill on another planet. Because of the specific angle of the sun and the shadows at that exact moment, it looks exactly like a giant human face.
Oh, I remember that.
It makes global headlines. People start theorizing about ancient alien civilizations. But when a better camera on a newer probe takes a picture of the exact same spot years later from a different angle, it is clearly just a random pile of rocks.
The pattern was a total illusion created by the brain.
Completely.
But people do this with highly serious, life-altering things too, right? It's not just clouds and toast. Look at the stock market.
Oh, the stock market is a prime example.
People are always inventing fake rules. I hear amateur traders say things like, if the tech stocks go down on a Tuesday and the Federal Reserve sneezes on a Wednesday, then gold will absolutely go up on Thursday.
It's absurd.
They look at massive walls of chaotic numbers and invent these crazy, convoluted rules based on completely random data just to feel like they are in control.
We cannot handle the terrifying reality that many things happen by pure chance. We want a formula.
We really do.
Let me give you a profound historical example of this. During the Second World War, when the enemy was bombing a major city, the terrified residents would carefully plot the exact impact sites of every single bomb on a city map.
Okay, looking for a pattern.
They would look at this map, stare at the clusters of dots, and think they had discovered a pattern. They believed they saw a deliberate, highly calculated strategy by the enemy bombers.
Makes sense that they think that.
Based on this invented pattern, they would develop elaborate theories about which specific neighborhoods were the safe zones, and they would move their families there.
And were they right? Was there a pattern?
No. After the war, when rigorous statistical analysis was done on the bombing data, it turned out the distribution of the bombs was totally mathematically random.
Wow, no pattern at all.
Absolutely no pattern. Why? Because the navigation and targeting systems of the bombers at that time were extremely rudimentary and inaccurate. They were just dropping them and hoping for the best.
Terrifying.
There was no grand strategy, just pure, terrifying randomness. But the human brain simply could not accept that, so it clustered the random dots into a false narrative of safety.
So our brains invent patterns just to feel safe in a chaotic world. And when there is no pattern to be found, we demand a story. We crave a narrative. This reminds me of story bias.
Ah, yes, story bias.
We love a good, juicy story way more than we love cold, boring facts.
We do. Reality is a muddle. It is just a complex, overwhelming jumble of interconnected details and probabilities. But we want our lives and the world around us to form a neat, easily digestible pattern.
Right, with a beginning, middle, and end.
So we take unconnected random events and knit them together into a neat, satisfying story, and a clear hero and villain.
Let me give a small example. Think about how the news operates. Let's say a major bridge collapses in a city. It's a massive, tragic event. What does the television news show us the very next day?
Usually not the engineering reports.
Exactly. They don't show us the detailed structural engineering reports. They don't discuss the tensile strength of the steel cables or the microfractures in the concrete. What do?
They show the emotional side.
They give us the emotional backstory of the driver who happened to be driving a red car on the bridge when it fell. They tell us where he was born, what he did for a living, how much he loved his dog, and how terrified he felt when the bridge started shaking.
Right. And the logically absurd thing about that coverage is that not a single detail of that man's personal life explains the underlying cause of the accident.
Nothing at all.
His story doesn't tell us if the bridge was poorly designed by the city planners, or if cheap substandard materials were used by the contractors, or most importantly, if other bridges in the city are at the same risk of collapse.
The facts are what we actually need to survive.
But abstract engineering details repel us. They are dry and hard to process. Entertaining, emotional stories, however, attract us like a magnet.
We just eat them up.
We prioritize the compelling narrative over the relevant life-saving facts. Story bias distorts reality and deeply affects the quality of the decisions we make as a society.
It's true. We will vote for a politician with a great story over a politician with a great policy almost every single time.
Not a question, but...
And it gets even crazier. After we make up a story to feel safe, and after an event happens, we have the sheer nerve to pretend we knew it was going to happen all along. We literally rewrite our own memories. The classic "I told you so" phenomenon.
Yes, this is known as hindsight bias. It is one of the most prevailing, deeply ingrained fallacies of all.
I do this all the time.
We all do. In retrospect, looking backward, everything seems perfectly clear and totally inevitable. Think about a major catastrophic financial crash, like the one in 2008.
Okay.
A year before the crash, almost all the mainstream experts, bankers, and analysts are painting a rosy picture of the economy. They are predicting endless growth.
Everything's fine, keep buying.
Right. But a few weeks after the market implodes, those exact same experts are sitting on television panel shows, confidently listing all the obvious causes. The bad mortgages, the corrupt rating agencies, the loose government policies.
Oh, yeah. Suddenly they're geniuses.
In hindsight, the reasons for the crash seem painfully obvious, and everyone claims they saw the warning signs.
It's so true. Everyone becomes a prophet after the fact. Why do we do this? Why do we lie to ourselves that we knew it all along? What is the evolutionary benefit of being a fake psychic?
It makes us believe we are much better predictors of the world than we actually are. It gives us a false, comforting sense of security.
Like we're in control.
If we can convince ourselves that the past was predictable, it makes the terrifying unknown future feel a little less scary.
But there's a downside to that, right?
A huge downside. It causes us to be incredibly arrogant about our own knowledge, which then leads us to take way too much risk in the future. We think we can predict the complex mechanics of the world, but in reality, we are just writing the story after the facts have already happened. We're historians pretending to be fortune tellers.
And that arrogance leads right into another massive glitch: outcome bias. We judge everything purely by the result. If the result is good, we automatically think the decision-making process was good.
Let me illustrate outcome bias with a famous, highly illustrative hypothetical scenario.
I love scenarios. Let's hear it.
Imagine a monkey sitting in a room throwing darts at a dartboard that is covered with the names of different companies on the stock market.
Okay, a stock-picking monkey.
The monkey's just throwing completely randomly. But let's say by pure statistical luck, the monkey's stock picks actually make a huge profit for 20 weeks in a row. What happens?
Well, a rational person would say, wow, that is one incredibly lucky monkey. What a statistical anomaly.
Exactly. But that is not what humans do. We don't just acknowledge the luck. We try to study the monkey's strategy.
You're kidding.
No. We bring in experts. Does the monkey eat more bananas on Tuesdays? Does he swing his arm a certain way before throwing? Does he favor the left side of the board?
That is hilarious.
We assume, completely falsely, that because the outcome was brilliant and profitable, the underlying process must have been brilliant and intentional.
We study the monkey. But wait, we actually do this in real life, don't we?
We laugh at the monkey, but we do this in business and politics constantly. We tend to evaluate the quality of a decision based solely on the final result, rather than on the logic and information used during the decision-making process.
Can you give a real-world example?
Think of a historical military event, like a surprise attack on a base. In retrospect, after the tragedy, people say, the base commander was an idiot, he should have evacuated everyone, there was plenty of evidence an attack was coming. But that is pure outcome bias.
Because at the time, he didn't know for sure.
Right. At the time, before the attack, there wasn't just a clear warning. There was a massive contradictory pile of signals.
Like noise.
Exactly. Some intelligence pointed to an attack, other intelligence pointed to a bluff, and some pointed to nothing at all. To truly, fairly assess the quality of a decision, you must use only the information that was available at the time the decision was made. You have to aggressively filter out everything you learn post-event.
So if we synthesize this for the listener, the big takeaway here is never judge a past decision of yours just by how it turned out.
Exactly.
A bad result doesn't automatically mean your decision process was flawed. You might have made a perfectly logical, highly rational choice based on the data you had, and you just got hit by bad luck. You shouldn't tear your hair out and change your whole strategy if the original reasoning was sound.
Precisely. If your process was good, stick to it, even if you lost this time. And conversely, you shouldn't applaud yourself or feel like a genius for a terrible, highly risky decision that just happened to work out by pure coincidence. You were just a lucky monkey throwing a dart.
Yeah. All right. So our own brains are constantly tricking us in isolation. We invent fake patterns in the clouds. We tell emotional stories instead of looking at facts. We rewrite history to look smart, and we judge by outcomes.
It's a lot to process.
It is. But as we all know, we don't live in isolation. We live in a society. And it gets even worse when we start interacting with other people. Social traps.
Indeed. We are fundamentally social animals, and many of our most powerful, hard-to-break mental glitches revolve around how we deal with others in our tribe. The most common, and perhaps most frequently exploited one, is reciprocity.
Oh, this one is so annoying. Let me give a small example. You are walking through an airport terminal, pulling your suitcase, rushing to find your gate.
I can picture it.
Suddenly, someone approaches you. They are smiling warmly, and they hand you a small, free gift. Maybe it's plastic flower, or a little pamphlet, or a piece of candy.
A classic tactic.
You don't want it, but you take it, mostly just to not be rude and cause a scene. But as soon as you take it, they immediately ask for a donation for their cause. And suddenly, even though you were in a rush, you feel forced to reach into your wallet and give them money. Why does that happen? Why can't we just say no thanks and walk away?
Because of the profound, almost physical discomfort of being in someone's debt. Reciprocity is an incredibly deep-seated survival mechanism.
Vile again.
Always. Let's go back to the ancient tribe.
Oh.
In ancient times, if I successfully hunted an animal and shared my extra food with you when you were starving, you essentially owed me your life.
Fair enough.
When I was hungry a few weeks later, you were biologically compelled to share with me. This complex web of mutual obligation is actually the glue that allowed human communities to survive and thrive. It ensured that one bad day didn't mean death. It is a beautiful, essential thing in a close-knit, trusting tribe.
But in the modern world, where we interact with thousands of strangers, it is completely weaponized.
Yes. Today, it is used to systematically manipulate us. Organizations, marketers, and skilled salespeople know that if they give you something small and completely unsolicited, you will feel an overwhelming psychological pressure to give them something much larger in return.
Just to get rid of that feeling.
Exactly. Just to relieve the uncomfortable, nagging tension of being in debt to them.
So the modern rule is never accept a free drink at a bar from someone you don't know. Don't take the free sample at the grocery store if you have absolutely no intention of buying the product, because you'll end up buying a $10 box of cheese just to pay back a 10-cent sample.
It's true. It happens all the time.
Okay, what about groupthink? This is another social one, and I guarantee every single listener has experienced this.
Oh, undoubtedly.
You are sitting in a corporate meeting room, 10 people around a table. The boss, or a colleague, proposes an idea for a new marketing campaign. You listen to it and you think to yourself, this is a terrible idea. This is going to completely ruin the project and waste our budget.
You're sitting there internally screaming?
Yes. But you look around the room and everyone else is nodding their heads. They are all agreeing. So what do? You nod your head too. You keep your mouth shut. Why do we do this? Why do smart people suddenly act dumb in groups?
You do it because, subconsciously, you do not want to be the eternal naysayer. You think, well, everyone else seems to agree, and they aren't stupid, so maybe I am missing something. Maybe I'm the one who doesn't understand.
It's easier to just agree.
Groupthink is a highly dangerous flaw, where a group of individually smart people makes incredibly reckless, disastrous decisions because everyone aligns their opinions with the supposed consensus. They value social harmony and going with the flow much more than they value the objective truth.
But why? Why is harmony so important that we would let a project fail?
Again, look at our evolutionary past. Being the dissenting voice, being the troublemaker who disrupted the harmony of the tribe was incredibly dangerous.
You'd get kicked out.
Exactly. If you annoyed the group too much, you could be expelled. And being expelled from the group in a harsh environment meant certain death by starvation or predators. You couldn't survive alone.
So it's literally life or death to agree with the group.
Conforming to the group consensus is hardwired into our amygdala as a literal life or death survival tactic. When you think about disagreeing in a meeting, your brain processes it as physical danger.
Wow.
But in a modern boardroom, this instinct leads to motions being passed and products being launched that every single individual secretly thought was a terrible idea.
So a room full of geniuses can collectively make the decision of an idiot just to get along. That is legitimately scary.
It is.
But there is another social emotion that you say is even worse than conforming, the disease of envy. I have to tell this story. It perfectly captures it.
Oh, I know the one you're talking about.
There is this old folktale about a poor farmer who finds a magic lamp in his field. He rubs it and a genie appears. The genie says, I will grant you one single wish, anything you want.
And he's a very poor farmer.
Very poor. He doesn't have a cow to plow his field or give milk, but his neighbor, right next door, has a big, healthy cow. So you would logically think the farmer wishes for a cow of his own, right?
Naturally.
No, he tells the genie, I wish my neighbor's cow drops dead.
It is a dark, funny story. But if we are honest, we can all recognize a little bit of ourselves in that farmer.
We totally can.
Envy is perhaps the most uniquely useless and idiotic of all human emotions. Think about our other negative emotions.
Yeah.
Anger, sadness, or fear. They all have some distinct evolutionary utility.
Like fear keeps you from getting eaten.
Fear keeps you safe from physical harm. Anger can give you the adrenaline and drive to fix a social injustice or protect your family. Sadness signals to others that you need help. But envy.
Does it do anything?
There is absolutely no single biological or social advantage to be gained from being envious. That doesn't motivate you, it just rots you from the inside.
And it's so weirdly specific. We don't envy everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We only envy people who are remarkably similar to us in age, background, and career trajectory. You do not envy a billionaire from the 1800s. You do not envy the Queen of England. You do not envy a plant or an animal.
Right.
You envy your colleague who sits at the desk next to you and gets a slightly bigger year-end bonus than you do. You envy your cousin who buys a slightly nicer car.
It's all about proximity. This happens all the time in real life. Let's say you work hard, you do really well, you get a big promotion, and you decide to move your family out of your average neighborhood into a much richer, fancier, gated community.
Sounds like the dream.
You think to yourself, I've made it. I'm going to be so happy here. But what actually happens after a month?
Instead of being deeply happy with your success, you suddenly feel incredibly poor and inadequate.
Why? You have a huge house now.
Because you have unwittingly traded in your old peer group for a new one. In your old neighborhood, you were the top dog. But now your new neighbors have significantly bigger houses, much nicer cars, and more social status.
Oh, man. So you just shifted the goalposts.
Because human beings cannot help but compare themselves to their immediate surroundings, envy kicks in. Your objective financial success actually led directly to status anxiety and profound unhappiness.
We literally torture ourselves. It's a total glitch. Okay, moving on. Let's say we manage to avoid envy. We isolate ourselves. We just focus on our own stuff. You would think we'd be content. But no. When we aren't comparing ourselves to others, we are absolutely panicking about losing what we already have. Our brains are terrified of loss.
Yes, the focus shifts inward, but the anxiety remains. When things become scarce or when we feel we might lose something we possess, we completely lose our ability to think clearly. We suffer from two interconnected glitches: scarcity error and loss aversion.
Scarcity error. I see this in myself all the time. Why does the very last cookie on the plate always look the most delicious, even if you are already full?
It's the scarcity.
You didn't want a cookie 5 minutes ago when there were 10 of them, but now that there's only one, you have to have it. Or when you were shopping online for a hotel room and big red text pops up saying, only 2 rooms left at this price. Or sale ends in 14 minutes. We suddenly pull out our credit cards and buy things we don't even need.
The typical human response to artificial scarcity is a complete and utter lapse in rational thinking. When something is rare, our primitive brain screams that it must be highly valuable and we have to secure it immediately before someone else in the tribe does.
Back to the hunter-gatherers.
Again, back in the hunter-gatherer days, if you saw a rare, ripe piece of fruit on a bush and didn't take it immediately, an animal or another person would, and you might starve.
So we grab it.
Today, marketers ruthlessly exploit this hardwired instinct. They place red sold dots on mediocre paintings and galleries to make the remaining ones seem more desirable. They create artificial deadlines for digital products that have infinite supply, making us snatch things up simply because our brain perceives them to be in short supply.
It's a total manipulation of our survival instincts. And loss aversion is even more powerful, right? We absolutely hate losing things.
We fear loss significantly more than we value gain. It has been proven through numerous psychological and economic studies that losing $100 emotionally costs you about twice as much happiness as the delight you would feel if you unexpectedly found $100 on the street.
Twice as much.
A loss weighs twice as heavy on the human psyche as an equivalent gain. And again, this makes evolutionary sense. One stupid mistake in the jungle that resulted in a loss of food or shelter meant death. But gaining an extra meal just meant you were a little more full. So we evolved to be highly, almost obsessively attuned to potential losses.
This explains the default effect. Because we fear loss so much, we hate changing anything. We stick to the default setting on our phones, our software, our lives.
Exactly. Let's take a very mundane everyday example. You might have a bank account that charges you a $60 annual fee just for the privilege of mailing you paper statements every month.
Ugh, I hate those fees.
You could easily save that money by logging online and clicking one single button to switch to digital statements. But you don't. You complain about the fee to your friends, but you don't change it. Why?
Because it's a hassle.
Because the default setting is comfortable. And any change, even a logically beneficial one, feels to the primitive brain like a potential loss of time, energy, or security. We cling desperately to the status quo.
And we are terrified of regret. Fear of regret is a huge part of this glitch.
Regret is the agonizing, lingering feeling of having made the wrong decision. We will do almost anything to dodge that terrible, sinking feeling in the pits of our stomachs. This is exactly why people hold on to terrible, plummeting investments.
Hoping it bounces back.
If you finally sell a bad stock that has lost 50% of its value, you are making a final, irreversible decision. You are locking in the loss. And if that stock miraculously shoots up the very next day, you will feel massive, unbearable regret. So to avoid the potential of that feeling, you hold on to it as it slowly drops all the way to zero.
People do this with the clothes in their closets. You have a weird neon shirt you haven't worn in 10 years. It doesn't fit. You hate it. But you absolutely won't throw it away. Why? Because you think, what if I throw it away today and next week I get invited to a 2010s retro-themed party and I suddenly need exactly this shirt?
It's the exact same logic.
We keep literal junk in our houses just to avoid a 0.1% chance of future regret.
It is entirely irrational, but incredibly common. We act conservatively, we hoard, and we actively avoid making final decisions just to protect our fragile egos from the phantom pain of future regret.
Okay, this brings us to a fascinating paradox. This fear of regret leads to a very strange contradiction in how we act when faced with problems. Sometimes we refuse to quit, and we fall into the sunk cost fallacy.
The sunk cost fallacy is driven by our deep psychological need for consistency. We find internal contradictions abominable. If we start a major project and then stop halfway through, we are publicly and privately admitting that we were wrong when we started.
Let me give a small example. You buy an expensive ticket to a highly anticipated 3-hour movie. Half an hour in, you realize it is without a doubt the worst, most boring movie you have ever seen in your life. But do you stand up and walk out? No.
You just sit there.
You sit there in the dark for another 2.5 hours physically suffering. Why? Because you tell yourself, I already paid $30 for this ticket. I have to get my money's worth. Or consider a bigger scale. A company spends $5 million developing a new software system. A year in, they realize the software is completely obsolete and won't work. But instead of scrapping it, the CEO says, we've already spent $5 million on this. We can't quit now. Keep going.
That is the exact trap. Quitting means admitting defeat and looking foolish. But rational, objective decision-making dictates that you must completely ruthlessly forget about the costs incurred to date.
Just ignore them.
No matter how much money, time, or emotional energy you have already invested in a movie, a project, or a relationship. Your assessment of what to do next should only be based on the future costs and future benefits. The $30 for the movie ticket is already gone. It is sunk.
Sunk cost. Got it.
Sitting there in misery for 2 more hours doesn't magically refund the money to your bank account. It just steals your valuable time as well.
We are so incredibly bad at doing that. We want to justify the past. But here's the paradox. Sometimes we refuse to quit the sunk cost fallacy, but other times we panic and feel the need to do something, anything. Which brings us to action bias versus omission bias. This is about when we choose to actively do something versus when we choose to passively do nothing.
Action bias is a direct product of our ancient, dangerous environment. Let's go back to the jungle.
Always back to the jungle.
If you saw a dark shadow move in the bushes, you didn't sit down on a rock, stroke your chin, and rationally contemplate whether it was a man-eating tiger or a harmless wild boar. You hit the road fast. You ran.
Action over thinking.
Action trumped reflection every single time.
Yeah.
Lightning fast reactions were essential to survival.
So today, in complex, unclear situations, we still feel the overpowering biological urge to just do something, even if acting makes things significantly worse.
Right.
Like an amateur investor who sees the stock market dip slightly. Instead of waiting it out, he panics and just starts selling and buying randomly, racking up massive fees, because just sitting still and watching the red numbers feels too emotionally agonizing.
Yes, we feel compelled to act to relieve anxiety. But paradoxically, there are specific moral and social situations where we freeze and deliberately do nothing, which leads us to omission bias.
Right. I want to give this analogy because it really, really made me think about how twisted our morals can be. Imagine 2 climbers climbing on a dangerous, icy glacier. The first climber slips and falls into a deep, freezing crevasse. He is hanging on by a thread.
Okay, a dire situation.
He might survive if you throw him a rope or call for help, but you decide to do absolutely nothing. You just stand there and watch, and eventually he falls and dies. Now, the second scenario. You are standing near the edge with a climber, and you actively raise your hands and push him into the ravine. He falls and dies.
Horrible.
Right. Now, looking at this objectively, both of your choices resulted in a man dying. But why does actively pushing someone feel so much more evil, so much more sinister than just standing there and passively doing nothing?
From a purely rational, legal, and outcome-based standpoint, both actions are equally reprehensible. The result is exactly the same. A life is lost due to your choice.
But it feels different.
But our primitive brain rates the passive option, doing nothing, as significantly less horrible. This is omission bias. It crops up whenever both action and inaction lead to cruel or negative consequences. We tend to prefer inaction because our internal conscience feels cleaner. If we didn't actively physically cause the harm, we feel less personally responsible, less guilty if we just let a bad thing happen organically rather than causing it directly with our own hands.
We just think, well, the mountain killed him, not me. We see this everywhere. Corporate boards will wait and wait until a struggling company naturally goes bankrupt, rather than actively making the hard decision to shut it down and fire people early.
Exactly.
Or think about taxes. People prefer not paying their taxes by conveniently forgetting to report some cash income. That feels slightly naughty, but not evil. But they would never actively forge fake tax documents. It is all a psychological trick to keep our conscience clean.
Exactly. The result, the government losing money is the same, but the internal narrative we tell ourselves to sleep at night is fundamentally different.
Okay, this brings us to a massive realization. We take all these actions, we panic, we follow the crowd, we hoard our stuff, or we choose inaction, because ultimately, at the end of the day, we are all chasing one single thing: happiness.
That's the ultimate goal.
Everybody just wants to be happy. But it turns out our brains are terrible at predicting what will actually make us happy in the future.
We are very, very poor forecasters of our own future emotions. This failure in effective forecasting is most evident in a psychological concept called the hedonic treadmill.
The hedonic treadmill. This is fascinating. Let's look at 2 extreme life-altering scenarios. Scenario A. You buy a ticket and you win a massive lottery jackpot, say $10 million.
The dream.
Scenario B. You have a terrible car accident and unfortunately lose a leg. How do you feel about the future? If you ask anyone, we all think the millions of dollars will make us perfectly, blissfully happy for the rest of our lives. We will never have a bad day again. And we think losing a leg will make us miserably depressed forever. We will never smile again. But what does the actual science say?
The science says that we vastly, incredibly overestimate both the intensity and the duration of our future emotions. Researchers studying major lottery winners have discovered that the massive happiness effect completely fizzles out after a few short months.
That's a few months.
The winner gets used to the money, the novelty wears off, and they return to their baseline level of happiness or unhappiness. If they were miserable before the money, they will be a miserable millionaire.
That's wild.
Similarly, people who suffer severe life-altering injuries often report returning to a baseline of relative contentment after a period of adjustment. They find new routines, new joys, and adapt.
So we always return to a baseline. We just keep running on the treadmill, sweating, chasing the next big thing, but not actually getting anywhere emotionally. What about a more everyday example? The dream house.
That's a perfect, highly relatable everyday example. Someone works hard for 20 years, saves every penny, and finally builds their massive dream house. It has 5 bedrooms, a huge kitchen, and it's located far away from the noisy city by a beautiful, quiet lake.
Sounds ideal.
For the first few weeks, they are beaming with delight. But because the house is so far from the city, they now have a highly stressful, traffic-filled 1-hour commute to work each way. 6 months later, the initial joy of the spacious house has completely evaporated.
They just get used to it.
They're adapted to it. They open the grand front door and feel absolutely nothing. But the acute stress of that 2-hour daily commute remains fresh, agonizing, and irritating every single day. The dream house actually had a net negative effect on their overall daily happiness because they failed to predict how quickly they would adapt to the static luxury and how enduring the active pain of the commute would be.
We are just terrible at planning our future feelings. And it turns out we are terrible at planning our simple daily tasks too. The planning fallacy. I'm so guilty of it.
We all are, trust me.
Every single morning, I sit at my desk, I drink my coffee, and I write a daily to-do list. I write down 15 things, and I think, I'm feeling great. I will easily finish all 15 tasks today. But do I ever finish them? Never. Maybe once a year if I'm lucky. I usually finish 3. But the truly crazy, irrational thing is, the very next morning, I sit down and write another impossible list of 15 things. Why do we never learn from our past planning failures?
We don't learn because of inherent wishful thinking, and because we focus far too much on the project itself while completely blindly ignoring outside factors.
Like what?
When you plan your day in the morning, you are imagining a perfect, frictionless scenario where you have 100% uninterrupted focus and endless energy. You aren't scheduling the client phone calls that run 20 minutes long, the unexpected traffic jam, the software update that freezes your computer, or the sudden family emergencies.
Life gets in the way.
Even though we have literally decades of life experience showing us that things always take longer than expected, the planning fallacy makes us overly delusionally optimistic every single time we start a new project.
We think we are the exception to the rule. And when we finally realize we are failing, when things get complicated, sometimes we swing to the opposite extreme. Instead of blindly acting, we just overthink everything to death. Which brings us to the fable of the highly intelligent centipede.
Yes, the centipede. Imagine a centipede is sitting on a table, and he sees a delicious grain of cheddar a few feet away. Now, usually, a centipede just walks, but this centipede is highly intelligent, highly analytical.
He's an overthinker.
He starts mathematically calculating the perfect, most efficient route to the sugar. Which of his 100 legs should move first? The front left? The middle right? In what precise sequential order should the other 99 legs follow to minimize energy expenditure? He analyzes all the math, gets completely frozen in the complexity of his own thoughts, stops dead in his tracks, and starves to death right there on the table.
He overthought how to walk, something he already knew how to do instinctively since birth. But wait, hold on. Let me challenge you here.
Yeah, go for it.
Earlier, we spent all this time saying we shouldn't rely on our primitive instincts for modern problems. We said the jungle brain ruins our investments. So what are you saying now? We shouldn't think at all. Just follow our gut and hope for the best.
It is a matter of knowing exactly when to use which cognitive system. If it is an evolutionary scenario evaluating if food is edible, sensing if a stranger in a dark alley is dangerous, or knowing which of your close friends you can truly trust, use your gut.
Okay, because the brain is good at that.
Your ancient heuristics are highly evolved and excellent at that. Also, use your gut for highly practiced, repetitive physical skills, like the centipede walking, or a professional musician playing an instrument. If the musician stops to think about where every finger goes, they will mess up the song.
Right, muscle memory.
But if you are facing a complex, novel, modern problem, like a major financial investment decision, a complicated medical choice, or a strategic business pivot, your gut will absolutely fail you. In those complex cases, you must suppress the gut and use rigorous logic.
That clarifies it perfectly. Gut for the jungle and practice skills. Logic for the spreadsheets and modern abstract choices. Okay, this has been an intense journey. We have mapped out all these glitches.
But a lot of them.
The brain invents fake stories to feel safe. It follows the crowd into disaster. It panics over artificial scarcity. It misjudges future happiness, and it refuses to quit bad movies. The situation seems totally, utterly hopeless. Our brains are a chaotic mess of ancient wires. So what is the practical solution? How do we actually fix our lives today with the brains we have?
The very first step, before you try to do anything brilliant, is to stop actively poisoning your own decision-making process. And the most common, most destructive poison in the modern world is the constant consumption of the news.
The news illusion. What do you mean? We think the first step to being a smart, responsible, well-informed citizen of the world is to read the news all day. We scroll our social media feeds, we watch the breaking news alerts on TV, we read the headlines on our phones. We think we are gathering data.
But you aren't gathering useful data. Daily news is toxic sugar for the brain. It is perfectly algorithmically designed to trigger your ancient survival instincts.
The jungle brain again.
It ignores slow, meaningful trends and focuses exclusively on scandalous, shocking, fast-changing, visually stimulating details. This constant bombardment stimulates what psychologists call the effect heuristic. It trains you to judge the world and make decisions based purely on immediate, visceral emotional reactions rather than deep, logical contemplation.
Let me pose a small thought experiment for the listener. Think about this seriously. Out of the roughly 10,000 news snippets, headlines, and Birking alerts you read last year, did a single one of them help you make a significantly better life, family, or business decision compared to not having read it at all?
Probably not.
Did knowing about a scandal halfway across the world improve your life? For almost everyone, the answer is absolutely, unequivocally no.
Exactly. It creates a highly distorted mental map of the actual risks we face. It distracts our limited brain power from deep, complex, enduring truths. So, step one of fixing your decision-making, step one of clearing the fog, is to dramatically reduce or entirely stop consuming irrelevant, panic-inducing daily noise.
Okay, cut out the toxic news diet. Clear the mind. What next? How do we move forward?
We adopt a philosophical concept called via negativa, the negative path.
I love this concept. Tell us the story about the sculptor.
There is a legendary story, often attributed to Michelangelo, of a master sculptor who was asked by an admirer how he managed to carve such a flawless, breathtaking masterpiece, a beautiful, lifelike statue out of a giant, ugly block of rough marble.
Right.
The admirer wanted to know what he added to the stone. The sculptor's answer was brilliant in its profound simplicity. He said, "I did not add anything. I just removed everything that was not the masterpiece."
I just removed everything that was not the masterpiece. That is profound.
It is the ultimate overarching takeaway for the listener. If we are completely honest, we do not know for sure what creates massive success. The positive path is murky. We cannot pinpoint exactly what guarantees a happy marriage or a billion-dollar company.
True, there's no magic formula for that.
But we do know with absolute empirical certainty what destroys success and happiness. We know that these cognitive errors, groupthink, envy, the sunk cost fallacy, outcome bias, routinely ruin our choices and our lives.
So you don't need to be a staggering genius to have a great life. You don't need a secret magical formula for brilliant decisions.
No, you do not. You just need to systematically, ruthlessly eliminate stupid mistakes. You need to chisel away the cognitive errors. Negative knowledge knowing exactly what not to do is much more potent and practical than positive knowledge. If you simply focus your energy on recognizing and avoiding these predictable traps, the upside, the masterpiece of your life, will largely take care of itself.
This has been an unbelievable journey. Let's do a rapid recap for everyone listening. We've seen how our brains invent patterns out of thin air to feel safe in a chaotic world.
We've covered a lot.
We've seen how we fall for the swimmer's body illusion, constantly confusing the initial selection factor with the final result. We've learned that we cowardly succumb to social pressure in boardroom meetings to avoid being outcast. We panic and buy useless things just because a website tells us they are scarce. And we sit through agonizingly bad movies just because our pride won't let us admit we wasted $30 on a ticket.
And we run on the hedonic treadmill.
Right. Perhaps most importantly, we learned that we are terrible at predicting what will actually make us happy, constantly chasing things we will just adapt to anyway.
And the master key to navigating all of this chaos is the via negativa. Stop desperately trying to force brilliant positive actions every single day, and instead focus purely on cutting out the negative, irrational, hardwired glitches.
I want to leave you, the listener, with a final, slightly provocative thought to ponder as you go about the rest of your day. We live in a modern culture that is completely obsessively focused on positive thinking.
Always doing more.
Every self-help guru, every podcaster, every article tells you to add this morning habit, do this 10-step routine, hustle more, optimize, do more. But what if the ultimate secret to a truly prosperous, peaceful, and happy life is actually doing significantly less? What if the absolute best, most profitable decision you make today isn't some brilliant proactive chess move, but simply pausing, taking a deep breath, recognizing a cognitive trap, and deciding not to do something stupid? Observe your own thoughts today. Watch these glitches happen in real time in your own head. Catch yourself in the act of being human and just step back.